What's going on, everyone? It's Alex here from Aleks Physio. So today we're going to be doing a research article review done in 2020 on traumatic rib fractures and looking at some of the statistics with regards to that in the US. This was a review done by Peak et al. And it was looking at traumatic rib fractures and whether or not it can be used as a marker for how severe an injury is. So basically what they did was they pooled together patients who were admitted because of a rib fracture from 2010 to 2016 in over 900 trauma centers in the US. And they used different inclusion criteria, but basically they took 550,000 patients who were admitted within this 6-year time period, and they looked at what were some of the statistics associated with individuals who were presenting for rib fracture. They came up with some pretty interesting findings. So this was a retrospective cohort study, which basically means they looked at the data in the past and they pooled it all together, and it was a specific set of population, which were individuals who were admitted to the hospital who also had rib fractures as one of their primary presentations as a result of trauma or any other reasons. The first one was that motor vehicle accidents were the most common cause for rib fractures. Blunt trauma accounted for the majority of 96% of rib fractures. Most common associated injury with a rib fracture was a collapsed lung or a pneumothorax, which is when air builds up in the pleural space, followed by a pulmonary contusion, which is when there's bruising in the lungs, and then the third most common one was a hemothorax, which is when blood fills up in that pleural space area. The average number of rib fractures was 3. Rib fractures in the elderly population were primarily as a result of high energy and low energy falls. 50% of patients were admitted to the ICU, and of those 50%, 25% of individuals needed a mechanical ventilator. The average mortality rate out of these 550,000 people was 5%, which was about 25,000 people died. 45% of these individuals had polytrauma, which is trauma or injury to multiple systems or more than one system in their body. Rib surgery in the form of a rib fixation was done in 4%, or about 25,000 people out of the 550,000. The average length of stay in the hospital was 5 nights. People who were presenting with polytrauma and also flail chest were more likely to be admitted to the ICU, which was about 70%. The highest mortality rate was in individuals who had flail chest at 13%, and elderly was at 8%, and polytrauma was 11%. Flail chest is when there are multiple rib fractures that then affect the chest wall structural integrity. So when people have flail chest, it significantly increases their mortality rate and the likelihood that they need surgery just because their chest wall integrity has been compromised. A unique finding was that individuals who were elderly did not stay in the hospital longer than younger individuals, but this was likely as a result of younger individuals had more injuries associated with the rib fractures. It was likely a polytrauma and a higher energy force that was applied to have the rib fractures plus other injuries, whereas the elderly was most commonly high and low energy falls. The mortality rate was 2.5 times more in individuals with flail chest than those without, and they found out that it was a significant prognostic indicator for mortality because it's usually associated with high energy impact trauma versus individuals who just have multiple rib fractures. This was a really interesting article because it just kind of gave you some statistics and some numbers with regards to rib fractures and kind of what the expectation is during hospital and what are some of the demographics with regards to individuals who are presenting and what are some things to be mindful of in terms of, looking at flail chest, which we've discussed in previous videos, pneumothorax, how many of these individuals who are presenting with this trauma that's resulting in rib fractures are actually dying, and some other aspects in terms of how long they're staying in the hospital, which ones are going to the ICU, and just being able to see what the data is saying. And because this is a unique study of its kind that looked at over 550,000 individuals in the US in over 900 trauma centers, it kind of just gives you an idea of what's going on and what the statistics are with regards to these individuals, so that you can learn just a bit more about how serious having a rib fracture can be and using it as a marker for the severity of injury, which is what the study was looking at. I posted the article below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and some of your comments and what you found most surprising about some of the results from here. Hopefully you found value in this video. If you like these kind of videos where I go over a quick summary of the research, please let me know down below, and I'll continue to make more videos that surround some interesting research articles and findings that I looked at. Until then, please consider subscribing if you find value, and we'll see you in the next video.